California Aquatic Bioassessment Work Group meeting. And being the 20th, I wanted to do something special, but I'm too lazy. I did something little for the 10th. Actually, I was trying to get Vince Resch, who's a professor in Berkeley and big name in bioassessment. He gave a presentation at the first, and then I got him to come to the 10th. But he's doing some kind of cruise or something in some tropical island now, so he couldn't make it to the 20th. So hell with it. We're not going to do anything special. I like to ask. In fact, we have a good crowd. I was worried about it because, of course, we have a competing conference, the State of the Estuary, and we have some people that decided to come here instead. I appreciate that. And so welcome. But I always like to ask how many people have, well, let me see, have not, well, no, how many people have been here over the past 20 years? Good amount. So we get a few new people, but we get a lot of people that keep coming back. And it looks like we're going to have another decent turnout, so that's good. So I want to welcome everyone. For those of you who haven't been here before, we started this 20 years ago to try to promote bioassessment, or in particular, just as simple as biology and water quality monitoring. And it's not a new concept. It's been around for many, many years. All countries all over the world do it. In the United States, we have quite a bit of different states and different degrees of bio criteria, or as we call it in California, bio objectives, because that is the end of the process, well, maybe the beginning of the process, but it is taking all that bioassessment data and actually putting it into some working tools, hopefully, to make streams healthier. And you're going to hear a lot about that today. In fact, we have a pretty good lineup, I think. You're going to get some up-to-dates on bioassessment, and we don't get this every year. We have all 3 states in the EPA Region 9 here, so you're going to hear from Arizona, Nevada, and of course California. And then we're going to have some sessions on various subjects. Non-perennial streams is going to be a big one. And then, of course, tomorrow we're going to hear about the problem with marijuana. It has been an up-and-coming issue. I mean, in researching it, there's been concerns for many years, but all of a sudden it's becoming more and more a concern, and people are starting to find out that there's water quality implications of growing marijuana, but we don't know to what extent. So you'll hear some of that tomorrow also. So I think we're going to have a pretty good session here. My introduction 10 minutes is usually sort of a buffer to get people in their seats, but it looks like we're there. So I don't know if I have anything else to say. And so, well, I guess I could, Nancy usually want me to tell about where people can go to the bathroom and stuff, right? Is there anything else? Oh, and we have the coolest laser this year for the first time. Well, if you sleep, I will. I've been known to do that. In fact, they've taken these, I shouldn't have this in my hand, but I'll try to control myself. But Nancy, should we have a couple minutes? Yes. Usually I make these notes ahead of time. And definitely we want to thank the sponsors. So we have, did we get EcoAnalyst? Oh, anyone here representing EcoAnalyst? Huh? Oh, there we go. So EcoAnalyst, we'd like to thank them. From Moscow, Idaho, we have eCorp, and we have represented from eCorp, and then also Aquatic Bioassay Labs in Ventura, back there. And so we want to thank you for helping us get donuts in the early days before we came here. In fact, that's one thing I'd like to mention, is that this is not a conference as much as it's a workshop or training opportunity for people. And we really thank the State Water Resource Control Board and the Training Academy that has put this on. Now, I'll give them more plugs later on when I give a little presentation about the training that they're helping us facilitate to, all over the state. But we really want to thank them because they make this happen. And then Nancy Barker over here and her crew at UC Davis, they've been helping me even more on getting the training stuff going too. So we're working with them and have been. How many years has it been we've been here? 8 years. So we really appreciate that. Also, we have a crew here that's going to be filming it, just like we did for the past 2 years. So this will be the 3rd year. So it'd be nice to go on the website eventually. We'll find out how long it takes. It'll be posted on the Swamp website. So for your friends and family that haven't been able to come here today, they can actually view and listen and watch all the slides and see how well people do in presenting their stuff. We try to keep people on time, but that's another thing. I will let people go. We do not have concurrent sessions. This is not a conference, so this is important information, I think, so I'll let people go. I'll nudge them to get off the stage, but we're going to have questions, and any question is not a question without a microscope microscope, without a microphone in your face. So that irritates people. And we have mic runners, and so they'll be running all over the place trying to get your stuff. And so, anyway, that's it. Did I forget anything? Yes, okay, I did forget anything, but I don't care. Oh, yes, John, please. I did forget.
Good morning. The California Water Quality Monitoring Council, and specifically the Estuary Monitoring Work Group of that council, released this morning a new web portal on California's estuaries. It's online. There's a poster and flyers in the back in the hallway there, so please have a look and check it out online, www.mywaterquality.ca.gov. Thanks.
So our first presentation this morning is going to be from Dave Crane. He works for OSPR, which is Office of Spill Response and Prevention. He's actually my boss, so I'm playing with you guys. He's going to kind of welcome you guys and give an overview. I thought it'd be nice for everyone to understand how OSPR works in the bioassessment world and some of the other things they're doing. So he was good enough to come up and let us know about the state of OSPR and in Department of Fish and Game. It's hard, it doesn't roll off as well, Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I've actually had people say, what's that? Anyway, Dave? And you know all the little rules and stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Jim. Jim asked me several weeks ago if I would come to the CABW and talk about OSPR, and I said, really? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the organization, and I was showing this to Jim a week or so ago, and he yawned a couple of times. But then I'm going to follow that up with some of the challenges that OSPR is dealing with and will be dealing with for quite some time. And then I'm actually going to tie it all into bioassessment. So you just have to trust me on that. So the first, before we do that though, Jim said he wasn't going to say anything about the fact that this is the 20th anniversary of the CABW. And I think this is a milestone. Jim started this 20 years ago or more with an EPA grant. He wasn't told to do this. It wasn't an assignment. He did it because, would you say you're passionate about bioassessment? Anyway, I'd like to give Jim a hand for doing this, getting it started. So before I talk about OSPR, the Office of Spill Prevention and Response, I want to say a couple of things about California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I have a real hard time with that new term too. It's still the Department of Fish and Game to me. Fish and Wildlife is a trustee agency. The wildlife resources are held in trust for the people of the state of California through the department. And the department has an obligation to manage and protect the wildlife resources in the state and their habitat. A couple of Department of Fish and Wildlife water policies encourage and support programs to maintain or restore a high quality of waters in the state and prevent degradation caused by pollution and contamination. And then there's also a wetlands policy, which essentially says no net loss of wetlands is allowed, and that is due to pollution too. So what's our hammer? The Fish and Game Code 5650 is a criminal statute. It makes it a crime to cause or allow any material that's deleterious to organisms enter the waters of the state of California. It's enforced by the department, and this code can be traced back to the 1876 California Penal Code. And I actually looked it up, and you can actually read it on the internet. It was approved April 1st, 1876. So OSPR's origins. OSPR's mandates were created in 1990 by the Lambert-Keene Sea Strand Oil Spill Prevention and Response Act. That act establishes oil prevention requirements for large vessels and facilities that could affect marine waters and requires cleanup for all marine spills. And it's not a coincidence that the legislation occurred about a year after the Exxon Valdez spill devastated Prince William Sound. But it wasn't just the Exxon Valdez. There had been several spills in the state of California prior to the establishment of OSPR. OSPR's mission contains 4 essential elements: prevention, preparedness, response, and restoration. OSPR writes regulations to prevent spills, reviews and approves all vessels and facilities' marine oil spill contingency plans, requires proof of ability to pay for a cleanup and damages from a spill prior to shipping entering California waters. OSPR is the lead agency for all off-highway spills. It funds the Oiled Wildlife Care Network, and it ensures restoration of injured natural resources. Now, I showed this diagram to Jim, and he said that there are going to be statisticians in the audience that are going to rip me up if I try to imply that OSPR's great prevention and response activities have had anything to do with a decrease in the amount of oil spilled in the state of California, so I won't say that. One other that I might mention is the SS Jacob Lukenbach, which was a freighter that was in a collision and sank during the Korean War while outbound from San Francisco Bay. OSPR was responsible for finding that wreck and determining that it was the cause of the San Mateo mystery spills that were occurring every winter during bad weather. And that has the finding and fixing that we did actually remove the oil from that wreck. OSPR is one of 4 offices within the Department of Fish and Wildlife. OSPR Organization contains the executive unit, enforcement branch, a legal branch, marine safety branch, preparedness branch, fiscal and administrative services branch, and a public affairs unit, and the scientific branch, which is actually the largest branch within OSPR. OSPR, when it was established, it was actually set up to be essentially a department by itself. It had everything that it needed to run as a department. OSPR's scientific branch includes field operations for environmental assessment and sensitive site protection, Geographic Information Systems Unit, veterinary services and wildlife operations, including support for the Oiled Wildlife Care Network and a Marine Veterinary Care and Research Center in Santa Cruz. Includes natural resource damage assessment and restoration and a health and safety program. Applied response technologies to study and approve dispersants and in situ burning and other technologies. Military facilities cleanup and Superfund programs. Marine invasive species program. And the OSPR labs, the Water Pollution Control Lab in Rancho Cordova, Aquatic Bioassessment Lab in Rancho Cordova, Elk Grove, and Chico, Petroleum Chemistry Lab in Rancho Cordova, and the Marine Pollution Studies Laboratory in Moss Landing. OSPR is responsible for both marine and inland spills. It acts as the trustee agency for the state. It forms unified command during large spills with the federal lead agency and responsible party. Provides the on-scene commander during spills. It staffs the incident command system positions. And it ensures thorough investigation, cleanup, and natural resources damage assessment. So what's the definition of a marine spill? It's 42 gallons or 1 barrel of petroleum hydrocarbons into tidally influenced waters of the state. The federal lead agency during a marine spill is the U.S. Coast Guard, and OSPR is designated as the state lead agency. The state funding for their response is the Oil Spill Response Trust Fund, and if it's less than a barrel, less than 42 gallons, even if it's in marine waters, it's not funded by the Oil Spill Response Fund. An inland spill is unauthorized release of any material that's deleterious to inland waters of the state. We share responsibility with Fish and Wildlife regional offices during an inland spill. The federal lead agency is the US EPA. And right now there's extremely limited state funding for inland response, and that's a problem. Department of Fish and Wildlife's trust resources are vast. 840 miles of coast, over 3,400 miles of shoreline, over 7,700 square miles of state waters, 4 marine sanctuaries, more than 300 endangered or threatened species, and we respond to spills anywhere in California's interior, which is almost 156,000 square miles. What are the risks in an average year? Oil transported by vessel is almost 544 million barrels. Total cargo imported by vessel is 170 million tons. This is as of 2012. 7,500 miles of pipeline, almost 15,000 vessel movements in and out of LA, Long Beach, San Diego, and San Francisco Bay. California oil production, 184 million barrels. And offshore production is almost 31 million barrels. And this last bullet is what I'm going to talk about for the remainder of the talk, and that is the increasing rail imports from North Dakota, the North Dakota Bakken Formation. These are shale formation, crude oils that are coming in by rail. This map shows a map of the U.S. that shows U.S. refineries, crude oil pipelines, and refined product pipelines. And what's missing between North Dakota and California? Anybody? There aren't any pipelines. So in 2012, where did California's crude oil supply come from? Came from Alaska, comes from overseas, which includes the Mid-East, offshore oil platforms, and California inland production. And it gets here by tanker from Alaska and overseas, and it's distributed by pipeline from the other sources. About 65%, in 2012, about 65% of the crude oil imported into California came by tanker. and the remainder is, again, distributed through pipelines. By 2016, the imported oil that comes in by tanker now is going to be just about cut in half, and it's going to be made up from the Bakken Formation, North Dakota crude oil. And I found this really amazing. And of course, it's going to come by rail. Within the next couple of months, there's a terminal that's being finished right now in Bakersfield that is set to receive some of this oil, and the oil that goes into Bakersfield is going to be, it'll be shipped by rail, and then it'll be distributed into the LA market by pipeline. This is just another diagram that shows how the foreign oil imports are going to decrease and be replaced by the Bakken Formation. This is the estimated North Dakota rail export volumes, beginning increasing around fall of 2011 through March, and it has increased dramatically, and it now stands at about 800,000 barrels a day. So what are the possible routes that these trains are going to come? Has anybody seen any of these trains yet? Well, that's what it is. It's North Dakota crude oil coming into the state. So it can come in Sacramento River, I-5 corridor. It can come in on the Feather River Canyon corridor, the I-80 corridor, and then again, like I mentioned, in through Barstow, Mojave, and into Bakersfield. This is a map that shows railroad and stream intersection locations, and you don't really need a map to know that if railway shipments are coming in this way or through the Feather River Canyon or this way, they're going to be crossing a lot of rivers and streams. This is another map that shows oil pipelines existing within California and stream location intersections. So one challenge that we have is OSPR's current emphasis is on marine spills. This vast amount of crude oil that's going to be coming in is going to be coming in from inland, and so that's something that OSPR is going to have to deal with, and the state's going to have to deal with. Another challenge is inland accidents are likely to increase. This one diagram shows rail incidents involving crude oil between 2000 and 2012, dramatically increasing. And this picture is of the Quebec accident that occurred this last July that I think it killed 47 people. One thing that you need to know about this Bakken Formation crude is it's not like the Alberta tar sands. It is a very light, sweet crude. It's loaded with gasoline range organic fuels. It's very similar, actually, to the Saudi Arabian crude oil. And I just added this, the Department of Transportation 111 tank car, which is how this stuff is transported. Well, each one will hold about 30,000 gallons, which is about 180,000 pounds. And if detonated, 15,000 pounds of gasoline is about 225,000 pounds of TNT. The NTSB has been quoted as saying that these tank cars are inadequate design, and there's a high incidence of tank failures during accidents. This is another picture of the Quebec accident. And this is a quote from University of North Dakota Environmental Research Center Associate Director. I wouldn't be any more concerned about a tank of Bakken oil versus a tank of gasoline. So that's reassuring. These are just some other examples This is from the 2012 Railway Safety Report. Crude oil business leaped 300%. These significant increases in transporting chemicals increase the risk of rail derailments. And here's some other examples of derailments from 2006 to 2013. And this was an article that was just in the Sacramento Bee on Sunday, October the 19th. And it was referring to the Edmonton, Alberta accident, which just happened. And it has raised more questions about rail safety and the transport of crude oil. So how does this all tie in with bioassessment? As an example, I'm using some work that Angie Montalvo did. 2005, there was a pipeline break on the Donner Summit into Summit Creek, and bioassessment was used for response monitoring during the spring and summer of 2005, and then it was used for recovery monitoring from 2006 through 2009. And I know a lot of you have probably seen this, but it's such a good example of how bioassessment can be used. Here's where the petroleum discharge was. We have upstream abundance and taxa richness numbers, and then downstream, it's really obvious. You don't have to be a scientist to see that it had a real impact on the benthos in the Summer Creek. So why use bioassessment? I'm kind of speaking to the choir here. It's a cost-effective tool, targeted and multi-habitat approach. There's no holding time requirements. Benthos can't move around like fish can and escape the effects of the pollutants. And benthos represent an extremely diverse group of aquatic animals that possess a wide range of responses to stressors. It also allows the detection of past pollution events. So what other, and you're going to hear more about this too, bioassessment is going to be used to investigate these marijuana growth sites. Jim's been working on this, and this was a good movie, actually. And it's going to be used to investigate water diversions, water pollution from illegal pesticides, rodenticides, fertilizer, erosion, and general habitat destruction, which we have seen in the last couple of years from these sites. So with that, thank you, and if anybody has any questions. Questions?
I'm not sure if you can you hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, so when oil spill happens in a stream, that pretty much floats on the top, and if you're measuring the benthos, how are they going to respond? Wouldn't it be more of the bugs that live more towards the surface of the water?
Well, it depends on what's spilled. Depends on the petroleum products that are spilled. In the case of the Summit Creek spill, it was diesel fuel. There are components of diesel fuel that are water soluble. They don't necessarily float. Some of it floats, most of it floats, but some of it is soluble in water, and that can be very toxic to benthic organisms. The Bakken Formation crude oil that I talked about that's going to be imported by rail, it has a lot of very light components, like gasoline, like I said, and some of those components are also very soluble in water, and they're going to get into the system.
Thank you, Dave.